For many years, Super Sentai Mecha have been combining together to make more powerful forms. But what is the biggest combo in Super Sentai history? Let's find out. Hello, this is Soundout here, and welcome back to another episode of Sentai Showcase. We're doing another one on Sentai Mecha, this time about the biggest Sentai Mecha combo in history. God King-Ohger from Ohsama Sentai King-Ohger. That series had wrapped up recently and now holds the record for the biggest combination. But what is the definition of biggest in this instance? Well, see, the thing is, Super Sentai Mecha have been combining since Super Live Robo and Shoujo Sentai Live Man, and there has been many combinations built up. There's been crazy things like Ultimate Daijujin was pretty large. There was also Injino G12 or Samurai Ha-Oh. And even the final combination from Don Brothers was quite impressive in its size and styling. But when you really look at it, are they the biggest because of their size? Or are they biggest because of their combination potential? And that's what we're talking about today. If you enjoy this type of video, please hit the like button and subscribe to the notification bell if you haven't already, especially to keep up with the Super Sentai Showcase series as it comes out on this channel. But what makes God King-Ohger the biggest combination in Super Sentai Mecha history? This is what makes God King-Ohger the biggest Sentai Mecha combination of all time. 20 individual components. Everything's on theme with bugs, and everything combines prior to combining all together. So we're going to go through each individual Shugod before we get to the individual combinations. Also of note, there is a number system. The back of the King Caucasus Kabuto box does number the Shugods, so we'll be using those numbers for reference. If you're wanting to follow along at home and figure out what Shugods are in what combo, I will be putting the numbers there for reference. And so because of that, that's also the order we're going to look at the Shugods themselves. Beginning with how they appeared in the series, we're going to go in order, and that'll be a kind of fun retrospective. So let's begin by taking a look at the first thing to appear for King-Ohger. Now, the first debut on screen of King-Ohger was in episode 45 of Don Brothers, where he looked like this, which is mostly the same as what King-Ohger would look like later, except mysteriously his head looked like Don Oni Taijin's, which was the Don Brothers mecha. And so because of this, a exclusive faceplate exists. While this is the first time we saw King-Ohger, the proper way to take a look at King-Ohger would be to start from the individual components in the way it appeared in Ohsama Sentai King-Ohger, as opposed to Avataro Sentai Don Brothers. Component number 1, God Kuwagata, belonging to Kuwagata Ohger. This is, of course, your main red component, usually a bigger part of the mecha than the rest of them for most series, but a very nice looking Kuwagata beetle. Or a stag beetle. The cool part here is he is articulated. You can move his pincers back and forth. They actually rotate up and down, which is not natural for stag beetles to do, but you got that. There's ball jointed legs down here as well to adjust, and you can also open up his wings so he can fly. One of the main details that is loved about the King-Ohger line, besides just the big combination at the end, is the extra range of articulation compared to most Sentai mecha, and a lot of that is owed to God Kuwagata, because he does contain a lot of the components here. Which also means, yeah, from the bottom you can see where the robot legs and arms are. However, there is some nice detail, the asymmetrical paint weathering, and other unique features that make it a very striking component to this combination, and also the central component of pretty much everything. Component 2, God Tonbo, belonging to Tonbo Ohger. This is a very nice looking design, a very long body as appropriate for a dragonfly, and some nice articulating wings. It suspiciously looks like the sword of a robot though, and we'll see if that comes into play later, but a very cool looking design nonetheless. Component 3, God Kamakiri, belonging to Kamakiri Ohger. This is a praying mantis, and a very nice looking one overall. A little chunky, but gets the job done, plus an articulating head on a ball joint, and individual articulating arms is very nice to see. Also, you can articulate the legs, though they're going to be a little bit stiffer because they have a ratcheted system to them. But overall, makes for a nice praying mantis mecha. Component number 4, God Papillon, belonging to Papillon Ohger. This is a butterfly, and a very nice looking one at that. Heavy on the paint detail, which is really nice to see, plus articulating wings. This makes for a very nice looking mecha component. Though some red is peeking through here, and we'll have to see where that turns out in the final combination. but overall a nice addition to the lineup. Component 5, God Hachi, belonging to King-Ohger. This wasp-looking character has some orange accents to it, making a very striking design. It's a very cool look overall, and some nice ball-jointed wings allow for some range of movement. Though if you don't have a flight stand, it's going to just kind of sit a little bit awkwardly on its stinger. Components 6 and 7, God Tento and God Tento. These identical ladybugs are a nice addition piece. They help out with the combination, and they're a neat little thing to have. I mean, they're just kind of adorable, and that's kind of fun. Components 8 and 9, God Kumo Silver and God Kumo Red. These spiders that are otherwise identical besides their color schemes add to the overall combination and power of King-Ohger, and for that, they are valued members of the team. Component 10, the most powerful piece and the linchpin to power in any combination, God Ant. God Ant, of course, does not need flashy paint to know how powerful it is. It is the most powerful component and is the linchpin of all combinations going forward. These 10 Shugods alone combine together into a singular robot, the mighty King-Ohger, the pride of the planet, the one to protect everybody, showing a uniting force between 5 different nations. This is King-Ohger properly done. This is the most articulated main Sentai mecha of all time, and also the one with the most components, which is super impressive. Adding in those extra 5, this is a 10-part combiner, and it's just the base form. When I mean the most articulated, I mean that most Sentai mecha had like the lateral, like up and down shoulder movement, and that was about it. Maybe you'd get a head joint. But this guy's got a ball-jointed neck. He's got 360 shoulders, a little clashing here. Outward shoulder movement on ratchets. Bicep swivel. He's got a double jointed elbow, especially if you remove the ladybug from his arm. Wrist swivel. We also got a waist swivel, which is pretty wide range. Hips that pivot out, pivot forward and back. Thigh swivel. A single jointed knee that moves full 90. And then a little bit of ankle tilt, though I do wish it was a little bit more because it would help with the overall stability. So for a deluxe mecha, this is incredibly impressive, and it's nice to see Bandai branch out in this way. Though I will say that as the further we go into the combinations, the less articulation he's going to have. Nature of adding up to 10 more components on top of this guy. But King-Ohger himself is a king. Now, a king needs some armaments. So let's take a look at some alternate combinations featuring other Shugods. Component 17, Guardian Rolling. This pillbug is not looking like he's super impressive, but he actually stores a lot of secrets inside. Not only oddly placed orange plastic, but in fact the ability to become a second weapon for King-Ohger. And that weapon would be the Rolling Hammer. And why is it the Rolling Hammer? Well, as a pillbug does, folds right up, and we can attach this chain piece into the top, which will allow us to attach this to King-Ohger himself. Yes, with the attachment of the Rolling Hammer into his hand, it is now Rolling King-Ohger, which is pretty cool. You can toss this around, and it's on a chain, which is really, really nice to see. It's the old school Sentai Mecha vibe of an actual metal chain. And that is Rolling King-Ohger. Component 16 is Guardian Snail, a tiny little snail that when you roll, he actually rolls his little shell. And that's because he's also got a Gatling gun on the other side. Yes, he is in fact a weapon. And he rolls, and it's kind of a neat little geared system. Also, to not be outdone, he does also have an articulating head. He can look left and right, which is pretty awesome. And then to turn him into the snail Gatling for King-Ohger to use, you just rotate the barrel, and it's all lined up and ready to go. By removing one of the God Tentos, you can attach the snail Gatling, making Snail King-Ohger, which you'll have to manually spin the barrel, but there you go. Now he's got some firepower in addition to all of that melee weapon. Component 11, God Kabuto, the first of the golden Shugods, in a nice black and gold color scheme looking very, very cool with some green accents. In addition to this, the wings open up for extra posing options, and you can also articulate each of the individual legs, giving you a lot of range on what to do. Plus, he features an action gimmick with his horn. Pulling it up causes it to bash down, so pretty cool feature overall. But of course, God Kabuto can combine with King-Ohger. To get God Kabuto ready for combination, we need to flip the horn down, pop the legs off of their little platform here, split him in half, which will reveal this really nice gold chrome-like structure here. you want to slide the legs over and then click them in place. Then kind of adjust these legs so they can stay out of the way as most as possible. That's not exactly proper grammar, but just try to get these all pointing that way. And then you want to take this other side here, flip it open, lower the jaw a little bit. There we go. It's kind of interesting because you think this side would be the side that would be displayed for cannon mode, but it actually is going to go on this arm. And so in order to get ready, we're going to flip this open, as that'll clamp down on King-Ohger's arm. So God Tento will be once again displaced, but unlike with the snail, he actually get to come back. And then you're going to line up on the arm to clamp this piece down. It goes down, clamps in place, and then we're going to attach God Tento back on so he gets to be part of this. He doesn't get left behind like he did before. And there we go. There is the Kabuto King-Ohger. It is my least favorite combination because this thing is so big, he can't really have his arms straight, and posing it's a bit of a nightmare because of how long it is, and then also because all of this clashes into all of that. But there you go. That is Kabuto King-Ohger. He's got a giant cannon arm. There's nothing to stop him now. What more could he need? Several more components, apparently, because we're still going to keep going. Component 13 is God Scorpion, the second of the Golden Shugods. This one having a lot more outset chrome pieces with the tail and stinger, as well as the claws. And some articulation. You can move the claws up and down a little bit. The legs move a bit here. But the main feature here is you pull this trigger, you can get some scorpion action, with the tail going in for a strike, which is really, really cool overall. Now, of course, this becomes a component for King-Ohger, so in order to do so, we're going to flip and rotate these pieces around, like this, and like that, basically giving King-Ohger one giant claw, which will look like that. And then that way you can have the legs over here, which this peg will go into the hand of King-Ohger. So let's get this attached to him. So, God Tento removes. Then we need to rotate the hand, bring God Scorpion in, and then line up the hand with the handle to lock it in place. Pop God Tento back on the top. And now we have Scorpion King-Ohger, where he's got a giant whack you claw, because he could just whack you with the claw. Also, the tail gimmick doesn't really work because it doesn't have room to arch back. But there it is, Scorpion King-Ohger. Component 12, God Hopper. This grasshopper is got some nice pink accents while still being one of the golden Shugods. And it does have a feature for replicating a grasshopper's movement with some nice spring-loaded action. Yes, if you do it just right, you can kind of have fun with your grasshopper jumping along. But of course, the grasshopper must combine with King-Ohger. In order to do that, we have to, sadly, take its legs and rip them from its body, and then split it in half for this golden array. We shall begin the combination with attaching 2 grasshopper legs to 2 King-Ohger legs. And then lastly, adorn it with a mighty shield. This is Hopper King-Ohger, a mighty powerful shielded version of King-Ohger, and looking very spiffy and shiny too. Now naturally, with the golden Shugods all being similar design, they combine together with King-Ohger to form Legend King-Ohger. Blazed in gold, this is the most powerful combination yet, and the least stable yet. Adding all these components onto it has made King-Ohger a little rickety. You're not going to be using that leg articulation anymore at this stage. But this beautiful combination is gold. Very, very gold, and very, very shiny. But I think it's time to take a look at another Shugod that can become its own individual robot. Component number 14, God Tarantula, belonging to Spider Kumonos. This is the largest individual component we've seen yet. A very large tarantula, much larger than the spiders we've seen before. And a very articulated one, with each individual limb having full ratchet joints and full pivot points for perfect adjustment in every way. In addition to a very ornate thorax with a launcher here, this is a very, very cool looking tarantula. But something this large isn't just a component, really. It's also its own mecha. The powers of Spider Kumonos resonate with God Tarantula, allowing for the transformation into the mighty Tarantula Knight, a standalone robot that can do its own fighting. And Tarantula Knight is a very impressive figure. Not only does he look really cool, really sleek, and really neat, considering he transforms in a single motion, with the only parts forming being the actual thorax here becoming the blaster, but he is fully articulated. Hips that rotate forward and back, in and out, thigh swivel, full jointed knee, ankle tilts, ratcheted shoulders, 360 shoulders, bicep swivel, single jointed elbow that moves more than 90, wrist swivel, articulating ball jointed head, and a little bit of forward and back torso movement. This allows you to pose this guy into a lot of ranges of poses that we never thought we could see with a Sentai Mecha. It is very, very impressive. You can even articulate the extra legs up top for whatever pose you wish for him to be in. The other cool part, he has an extra feature, because just like with the spider head using this mask, he can use these goggles for extra weapon abilities. And that, I think, is super awesome. This means that Tarantula Knight is one of the coolest individual Sentai Mecha robots, regardless of being part of the King-Ohger series. But he does have combination potential with his own Guardian Shugods. Component 19, Guardian Pede. This is a centipede, and much like real centipedes, it does pivot and articulate just a little bit. It should move a lot more if it was a real centipede, and while there are other connections points here, they kind of pop apart more so than actually rotate. But at least it has the look of a centipede, and they even painted in the eyes. One of the things about this line is they're incredibly detailed, and I really do appreciate that. But naturally, he does become a weapon, the Pede Chainsaw, which looks something like this, which is pretty cool. It's essentially just a hack-em slash-em chainsaw arm. But of course, it combines with God Tarantula. It's as simple as 1, 2, 3, boom. The Pede Chainsaw with Tarantula Knight, which is also known as Tarantula Knight with Pede Chainsaw, one of his Guardian weapons. Component 18, Guardian Cicada, which of course is a cicada. A very unusual beast to use for a combining robot, but a very neat one. The wings articulate and can fold out so they can imitate flapping, which is pretty cool. But of course, just like the other Guardians, it does have a weapon form in the form of the Cicada Blade, which is essentially a dual-bladed arm-mounted blade weapon, which is pretty awesome. And of course, it attaches to Tarantula Knight, allowing for Tarantula Knight with Pede Chainsaw and Cicada Blade, which is a pretty neat combo because now he's got a couple melee weapons on top of his previous only ranged weapons, and it makes for a very, very cool combination. While it's nice having Legend King-Ohger as well as Tarantula Knight, they can combine together. However, Guardian Pede and Guardian Cicada will be staying out of the way for now. When the power of 6 kings, 6 kingdoms, and 14 Shugods come together, it forms the ultimate combination to this point in time, Extreme King-Ohger. However, incomplete. Once the access of the King Crown from Kuwagata-Ohger, it allows the complete form Extreme King-Ohger to be formed. At Extreme King-Ohger's debut, it tied with the previous record holder of a Sentai combo. Wild Tosai Dodeka King was 14 components. Extreme King-Ohger is also 14 components, which means it's already hit the new benchmark. It tied with the previous. But of course, there was more components to be had. And that's especially a good thing considering that Extreme King-Ohger is extremely unstable. Due to the size of Tarantula Knight attaching to the back of Legend King-Ohger, you have a lot of parts clashing into each other, and more specifically, a lot of back weight. They managed to counter the weight because of the Kabuto cannon here, but it is not the most stable combination, and any slippage of the legs is going to cause the entire thing to crash. In fact, I want to make my point so much, I think I'm going to make it. There it goes. Yep. It kind of just starts flopping. If King-Ohger is going to get more components added to it, it's really going to need some leg support because these are not holding it together the way it once was. Luckily, we are not done with combining things on King-Ohger. Component 15, the Caucasus Kabuto Castle. This is an impressive thing to see, because in the series, this castle had been a figurehead of many scenes before the reveal late in the series that it actually can transform into its own mecha. And transform it does. Interestingly enough, while the series of Mecha itself has gone to go for more articulation and less bricky blocky stuff, well, this is a lot of bricky blocky stuff, as you'd imagine, from a castle transforming. Because as Kabuto Caucasus Castle rises, it becomes its own true form here in the form of King Caucasus Kabuto, which is one impressive beast. And it's very large. It's very, very large. What's interesting to note, though, is like the other King-Ohger mecha, it has more articulation than past mecha, but it's a little bit more limited than the others. He does still have a head rotation. His shoulders do rotate. They rotate out. There is an elbow swivel, a wrist swivel, hips that move out, not really anything else in the legs, and then some ankles that kind of don't really pivot too much. They're at an angle, though, so he stands flat at a dynamic stance. But that's about all you get from him. Very impressive, though, with the shiny gold, the very large size, and the overall impressive details and features. He matches with the gold Shugods we've seen in the form of Kabuto, Hopper, and Scorpion. But he also has another component to him. Component 20, Guardian Hercules, which easily becomes the Hercules Axe. And this is pretty much the last component that we have not seen yet, because this is the final little beetle. And in fact, it's kind of fun how he transforms pretty simply and easily into this axe weapon. And this axe weapon fits perfectly in the hand of King Caucasus Kabuto to make a complete form, one that can fight, for a whole 2 times in the series. Yeah, they didn't use this form too much, but it is an impressive, mighty robot all the same. However, that's not the only form that the castle can take, for the castle, becoming King Caucasus Kabuto, is also a Shugod. So yes, King Caucasus Kabuto is not just a robot and a castle, but also a Shugod, and that is what we have to do here to turn him into that. It's interesting that this reveal was after the reveal of the castle to the robot, considering it kind of makes more sense to go from castle to Shugod to robot, but that's just kind of how things go sometimes, especially with a component this large. But there we have God Caucasus Kabuto. This is the biggest component by far, biggest single component, and it makes for a very impressive beetle tank that also works as a spaceship because Sentai is cool like that. So it's a lot of impressive things involved with this component, but if you may be noticing due to the limited nature, it does take a lot of sacrifices in order to make the largest Sentai mecha combo of all time, God King-Ohger. I think it's time to form God King-Ohger. God King-Ohger is not only impressive for being a 20-part combination, something that had never been seen before in Super Sentai. It not only makes for an impressive toy, but an impressive visual in the series itself. But something even more significant is the fact that while the 6 main Ohsama Sentai members can produce God King-Ohger and combine them together, it's not at full power unless 20 people are piloting it, which is what they did in the debut of God King-Ohger in order to defeat a much more powerful villain. The 20 people being made up of those of their trusted allies within each kingdom, uniting the planet together to defeat evil, which is such a great visual and not only a great story beat for Super Sentai, but such a great thing for humanity overall. Behold, God King-Ohger, the biggest combination in Super Sentai history. 20 components, incredibly large, totally a brick. All the articulation that King-Ohger had is completely gone at this point in favor of stability, which is much needed because these legs that are made up of King Caucasus Kabuto, or God Caucasus Kabuto if you're wanting to do it that way, these legs add all the stability that was missing from Extreme King-Ohger. It not only beefs up the legs going on here, it gives balance points for the legs of of Tarantula Knight, and that allows for the balance of the backpack here. And even if you're crazy, you can pop the sword off of the back and bring it all the way around, and you can have God King-Ohger hold it. It's just going to be a little tricky to get around the Kabuto, and as you see, we lost pieces on the way there. You can do it. I'm just not going to do it right now. Okay, so with that aside, the impressive part about this is that this is the final culmination of all the design elements that had led up to it. The Kabuto cannon, no longer too long because of the extra platform that the extra legs provide. The scorpion arm doesn't look too out of place because now this thing is gigantic. Other details, the grasshopper legs, when they plugged into the legs of King-Ohger, they kind of ran into some of the head components. Not anymore because now we have more space. Once again, the Tarantula Knight on the back is balanced out because it has places for 2 of its feet to go, anchoring the entire thing. On top of that, the other large combos couldn't find a way to include Rolling, for example, well, Rolling's now included. Same with Snail, same with Peed and Cicada. Those 4 hadn't been in any of the larger combinations prior. And it also helps that because of the height, you can have that piece just hanging down there. It's very impressive, and the most impressive part to me is, unlike some other large combinations, like Wild Tosai Dodoka King, the previous record holder, it actually uses every single component of all of the mecha. And it is very impressive that you can fit every component onto this. There's nothing left behind. The only thing left behind is the Don Oni Taijin face, in case you got that pre-order bonus to make Don King-Ohger. But other than that, which isn't ever seen in the King-Ohger series itself, every other component is in here. And that is amazing, because previous record holders of all mecha combining still left parts out, like Wild Tosai Dodoka King, for example. So I love this. It's absolutely beautiful. The one thing I will say is that this is no longer a play piece. Once you combine God King-Ohger, it stays as a display item because it's stable and it's not going to go anywhere. But you start playing around with it too much and things will start to sort of fall apart. But that being said, I absolutely love this. So the last episode of Sentai Showcase was about what I thought was the worst mecha line. Is all this praise I'm lobbing at King-Ohger mean that I think this is the best one? Maybe, maybe not. It's definitely up there as one of my absolute favorites of all time. So I hope you enjoyed that look at God King-Ohger and all of its components. 20 components in a single combination is something I don't feel like we're going to get anytime again in the future. Same with the articulation range in the main King-Ohger and Tarantula Night Mecha. Those seem like they got really feisty one day and really cranked something out great. Now, Bakuage Sentai Boonboomger has its own final mecha combination, which is totally fine for what it is, but it's definitely not charting and topping God King-Ohger anytime soon. And honestly, it does feel like God King-Ohger will be one of those sets of mecha that's going to stand alone for a long time, where people look at it, kind of like the way Engine OG12 has, where people will always want to have that combo because it's so involved and so intricate. And it's so complete. I think one of the biggest things over other giant combos is the fact that God King-Ohger can use every single piece at once, so you don't have anything hanging off onto the sides. That is such a great thing, and I think that's what makes it one of my absolute favorite pieces in my collection. Now, of course, this isn't the end of the Sentai Showcase series. It's an infrequent series on the channel, but I try to get these out on the regular. So if you don't want to miss out when the next Sentai Showcase video drops, hit subscribe and the notification bell if you haven't already. Hit the like button while you're down there if you enjoyed this episode, and leave any comments and questions down below. There's certainly more on the way for Sentai on the channel, as well as all kinds of other cool stuff, so you don't want to miss out. Plus, if you want to make sure you don't miss a video, join our Discord server in the link below. You also get notifications every time a video goes live on the channel. Really cool way to keep track of what's going on in the world of Soundout12. Also, come join our live streams every Monday at 5 p.m. Eastern for news and discussions and all kinds of cool stuff. Plus, if you'd like to help support the channel directly to make videos like this possible, join as a channel member. There's perks like early access to videos, member-exclusive live streams, and special shoutouts depending on what tier you choose. So let's give some special shoutouts to our channel members. Special shout out to all our channel members, including our captain tiers, Spin-54, Toma K, MasterBen95, Jamie's World, Forever1000, Clint Jorgensen, Kamen Jojo, Stephen Hinojosa, Muhammad Faiz Daniel, Dominator, Yash Gangater, R2 Wingo, Doge9789, Alex Alexis, Brendan Donnellan, Toast Rave, Brenton Yadden, Mr. Smelly Potato, GV2186, and Silver Bricks. Thank you all for your support. You can find me across social media at Soundout12, though I'm way more active on our Discord server. You can also find my graphic designer on social media and Discord at DarkClaw643. Plus, you can find Hero Club at hero-club.com for tokusatsu interviews, reviews, news, and more. And until next time, this is Soundout saying, see you in the next showcase.